I guess I have a couple of brief stories that illustrate that. One involves Ken's father, my editor we've been talking about. He wrote a play, in the 70s, I guess, and it was very much about his family. And in there was a character who had put down new white carpeting, and she made people take off their shoes when they walk onto this new white carpeting. Well, Jack never liked to take his shoes off, but he had to do it. So he put this character in the play, and he's making fun of this woman who insists that shoes come off to walk across the carpeting. And he thought he was safe with that because she would never see the play. But to his surprise, I think for the first time ever, she decided to come to Columbia where the play was being put on and watch the play. And he came up to me one afternoon and he said, "What am I going to do? I can't take it out of the play. You know, that part of the play depends upon that." I said, "Jack, you wrote it. You're going to have to live with it." He said, "Oh, God." So he did. When the play was over, she came up and she said, "A wonderful play. Wonderful play. I particularly liked the part about the woman who made people take off the shoes and the white carpeting." Why? Because that made sense to her. So sometimes when you're writing, you think, well, this is going to be offensive to that person, but if you've written truly and accurately, you probably are going to be all right. It's when you start trying to cover for them that you get into trouble. With River Horse, my third book, as I mentioned, I could not get started when we got off of that trip. It took 4 months to get the boat across the country. I couldn't get started, and for 6 weeks I was sitting there. Nothing had happened, and I was well past the due date on this book. Again, you know, having to pay back a royalty. I'm getting desperate. What do I do? The problem, it dawned on me, was that to make this trip, I had 7 friends who helped me, not all at the same time, one at a time, who were my co-pilots. And I realized that if I tell the truth in certain circumstances about what that person said or did, there were 6 men and 1 woman, what that person did, it's not going to reflect well on them. But I have to tell the truth because if you're writing nonfiction, the reader's got to be able to trust you. So what do? I can't fake it. And a friend of mine who's a writer, leading feminist writer in the country, said, "Don't you remember Virginia Woolf in Orlando?" I said, "Of course. We don't need to know what gender my co-pilot is." So that solved that problem. I will create a composite character, very dangerous in nonfiction. People have lost prizes, Pulitzer prizes for doing this. A composite character who will be my co-pilot. But the reader has to understand what's going on. So the second page of the book is a dedication to co-pilot, whom I call in the book Pilotus. I thought that was fairly obvious, co-pilot, Pilotus. First I spelled it with T-U-S, Pilotus, which is a Latinate ending for masculine ending. And as I say, one of the co-pilots was a woman. She was happy to be thought of as a man. She was a tomboy, tom woman. But I decided that's not going to work. So I put the I in there as a neutral. The second page of the book says this book is for, and it gives the actual names of my co-pilots. And I thought that's fine because the reader knows right off the bat that my co-pilot is a composite character. And that gave me the freedom to write exactly what happened, I mean, as I understood it and saw it. I had been deeply influenced negatively by a big hot book that came out sometime before that called Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. You know that book by John Berendt? It's an interesting book. It's about Savannah, Georgia. And the reader goes through the book, reading along, fascinating stories, page to page. You get to the end, and there's a paragraph at the end of the book in which John Berendt, the author, says, "Some of these people I made up, and others I've modified." Well, I like that paragraph in there, but why is it at the end of the book? I want to know that at the front end of the book. And I've always told my writing students over the years that I think that in nonfiction, and we were talking about that, in nonfiction, this is true of other forms too, but in nonfiction, you can do whatever you want to do. You can violate any rule you want, except one. You must never violate the trust that the reader has in your work. The reader must be able to trust you. And I caught a lot of heat some heat from reviewers because I created that composite character, even though it's up front. This is a composite character, and this is who it is. But it saved, of those 7 people, it saved 5 of the friendships. Even still, I lost 2 of them. They knew who they were. Nobody else knew who they were. I guess the wife or husband knew who they were. But they were angry because The men were especially angry because I showed them moments of fear. I mean, we all were afraid at times. Take a boat across the country, and if you're not afraid, you're superhuman. One of the phrases in there was Ken's dad, who loved baseball, said that he, and as he did writing, he said, I wish we were on the river, on the Missouri River. He said, I wish I had the compression of Emily Dickinson. I wish I had the characters of Charles Dickens. I wish I had the complexity of William Faulkner, and I wish I had the expressive brevity of Ernest Hemingway. And at that time, a reporter from the Kansas City Star happened to be on the boat with us writing a story about our trip. And he heard that, and he said, then I blew my punchline. Then Jack said, and the swing of Babe Ruth. And the reporter said, if you had that last one, you wouldn't need the others. Well, I put that in the book. I mean, I thought that was a pretty good line. Somebody cited that line specifically as that's too good for anybody to have said. So even when you work hard to write things exactly as they are, you're going to probably get accused of making them. John McPhee, an acquaintance of mine, told me that he's never written a book, but what one of the people who appear in his book did not end up angry with him because he thought, or she thought, that John had not quite been accurate in the reporting. Was anybody who will go into the country and talk with people who are there and stop listening to corporations but listen to the people themselves, I think your heart is going to make a shift if you're over on the right side of things. But you can see the effects of that. You can see the effects of something I worry about very much for our country, and that is the increasing power of corporations in America. I really have fears that we're headed toward an oligarchy, and you know this, I'll remind you, but an oligarchy is ruled by the few, and the few that I fear are the corporate heads, the CEOs, because they become experts at making us not only buy what they offer and think the way that they would like us to think, but they make us want to do it. We're eager to do it. So we're eager to put on a T-shirt that advertises something. Why are we walking billboards? To my mind, we've been brainwashed in that way. Well, you can see signs of that all over the country. Time until we solve one problem ahead of that, and that is human numbers. Until we have control of human numbers, every other problem we try to solve, if we get a solution, it's going to last 30 minutes, and bang, we're right back where we started. I mean, look at traffic in Los Angeles as one example. There's nothing wrong with the traffic here, except there's too much of it, right? And if we had a Los Angeles that was a population considerably smaller, we could go up and down Santa Monica Freeway, and whoo, there are too many of us. And there's no way, and nobody's talking about this today. Environmental groups, the key environmental groups especially, stay off of that topic. It's just too hot to talk about. And it's the most important issue of all, and you see signs of that. If you're really serious about your writing, I'm going to tell you the secret of good writing. And I don't think anybody will disagree with this, but this is the secret of good writing. And I'll give it to you in 3 words. They're quite easy to remember. Revise, revise, revise. That's what and I'm talking about the prose now too. I'm reading through something, and there's just too much writing that this writer needed one more draft of this. And you're thinking, well, this guy has done, my last book I did 10 drafts of it. But I can't get it right, and I don't think anybody else can either, doing too many fewer drafts than that. And I really recommend to you that if you're writing any of your reports or your fiction or whatever you're writing, if you're working particularly right from the start on a computer, try to mess it up so that when you look at this printed page, it looks like it's not finished. The worst thing, is to start justifying your margins and using fonts and really making a good-looking piece of paper, because it looks then, even on a first draft, like this is pretty good. This is finished. And it's not. That's the reason, one of the reasons I use pencil and pen, because you know it's not there yet. No teacher can connect with every student, but I think the ones who presented an honest format, that they were not afraid to speak up on issues. I remember I had my Latin teacher was also one of my English teachers, a woman about this tall, Nell Adams, and she would say whatever was coming into her mind, but it was heartfelt and it was sincere. And even though, especially the boys in the class would laugh at her, I remember when she explained a split infinitive in a commercial to us, and we were all laughing that she's getting upset about a split infinitive. It stuck in my head, and so here I am before the people talking about Nell Adams and the split infinitive. I mean, that cut through.
The number one problem
like
facing humanity,
that when I'm writing sometimes, one of those phrases that somebody said.
There is no problem on the planet we can solve until we,
for any length of infinitive comment registered with somebody out there. So I don't know, maybe I'm thinking my way through this, but I think that what you say to your students, you probably are not going to know, number one, the student who is really hearing that. I don't think it's going to be your best student. I was never anybody's best student, but I remember a lot of their words, the teacher's words. And if you're speaking honestly and truthfully, there's probably going to be somebody there who is hearing that. And you may not live long enough to see the fruition of something you put in that child's head. I like to use the word, talking with stepchildren, so I like to use the word with my wife of seeds. What we're trying to do here with I don't have any children, they're her children. What we're trying to do here with this child or that child is plant a seed. We're not going to see its fruition for a long time, but right now it's there. They heard it, and maybe one of these days that seed is going to grow into something else. So I think all of my books, you know, if you stack my books up, and there'd be a stack like this, those are seeds of a whole lot of teachers, not just people in the classroom, of course, but other places too. I didn't invent this on my own. I'm just repeating in a way.